walking up and down the road, like, doing the signs.
I was waiting, but the seats were getting taken. You want to sit on my lap?
I mean, it was neat.
Mom has said they're going to take my notes in red on the actual one they sent us, so they got all the notes from me. And then you can erase my notes. It'd be easy to post because you have an electronic copy. Only say it once. Only say it once.
It's interesting. They approved the building out. It's very nice. Styles are just ideas.
Not nicer than our school.
How can we fit that into an objective? I expect objectives to be written for everybody. That's such a good idea.
Well, evidently I'm going to have to because my solar is.
Good evening. With the quorum present being 7:05, I call the Princeton School Board meeting to order. Could you please join me in the pledge of allegiance? We're going to entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Motion by Ms. Price, second by Mr. Summer. Roll call?
Ms. Manboy?
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Dr. Sloan, is there that document that we had with the discussion items and we talked about? Maybe we can get that before we take it to the book there. Good evening. Here's our patron comment portion of the meeting. Patrons are invited to address the Board of Education. Please come to the podium so everyone can hear you. There's concerns and opinions, but we do not answer patrons' questions during this portion of the meeting. Questions and concerns will be addressed by Dr. Sloan and other appropriate staff members. Please remember that your comments about individuals and staff are not allowed due to confidentiality. These concerns need to be brought to the administration's attention and may be brought to the board in closed session. First one tonight will be Eric Sider.
President Lafada, Board of Education, Dr. Sloan, and Executive Cabinet. By state statute, every elected school board member across the state of Missouri requires training to become a certified board member. This training is provided as a service of the Missouri School Board Association. Part of this multi-day training includes the roles and responsibilities of school board members. On page 178 of my training manual, it says, members of the Board of Education accept the responsibility to improve public education in the district. To that end, all board members will. Among the 16 items listed is express personal opinions, but once the board has acted, accept the will of the majority. This particular item has proven difficult for Mr. Mike Summer. Most recently, he actively campaigned against a proposed tax levy placed on the ballot by the majority of the Board of Education. Mr. Summer publicly spoke against the levy increase to key elected leaders and business leaders in the district, to the detriment of school district students and his fellow board members. During the 3 years we served on the Board of Education together, Mr. Summer approved every annual budget and revised budget, approved the setting of tax levies, approved negotiated salaries with staff, and over 99% of the expenses of the district. Publicly, Mr. Summer is stating that there's a spending problem within the district. I hope the Board of Education and the public recognize the hypocrisy of this statement, given the actions of Mr. Summer. One of the best examples of hypocrisy happened at the most recent school board meeting on August 20th, 2015. During this meeting, Mr. Summer acted to approve travel expenses to pay the board's multi-day attendance at the Missouri School Board Association meeting at Lake of the Ozarks Cantera Resort. Luckily, this motion was defeated by a vote of 1-6, with Mr. Summer being the only member to vote in favor of taxpayers paying for this event. Later in the same meeting, Mr. Summer inappropriately brought up in open session that the staff salary should be reduced. The discussion of negotiation strategies is one of the topics allowed by state statute to be discussed in closed board meetings, not open meetings. The intention of the statute is not to interfere with good faith bargaining and not to publicly disclose bargaining strategies. Board of Education, I ask you to elect a new delegate for the Francis Howell School District to the Missouri School Board Association and publicly censure Mr. Summer for conduct unbecoming a certified board member of the Francis Howell School District. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tim Holmes.
My name is Tim Holmes. I'm a guidance counselor at Francis Howell Central, and my colleagues are here tonight this evening with me to talk about the counselor's responsibilities to our schools and the community. School counselors are essential in creating safe and secure school environment by helping adolescents struggling with mental illness, aiding in academic achievement, and preparing students for their post-secondary education. A successful school must be a safe school. Research shows that early and effective mental health treatment can prevent violence. We need school counselors to make this happen. We need school counselors to work one-on-one with the school population that is increasingly marked with higher rates of mental illness than ever before. There are more students with psychological and medical diagnoses. According to the high school's confidential health list, there are over 1,400 students, which is about 25%, struggling with bipolar disorder, anxiety, depression, OCD, ADD, and ADHD. These students and families rely on counselors to help them navigate through high school and beyond. School counselors increase academic achievement by teaching social and emotional learning skills. School counselors show students how to resolve conflict, manage anger and anxiety, reduce bullying, and other essential social and emotional skills. Social and emotional needs must be met first before learning can occur. Currently, there are over 200 high school 504 plans that counselors alone are expected to manage. Counselors arrange meetings, significantly weigh in on interventions, plan, and coordinate these educational plans. At the high school alone, there were 79 hotline calls of abuse and neglect last school year. These heart-wrenching situations demand individual attention by a professional school counselor. For example, a student in a situation suspected of being a victim of abuse or neglect can demand several hours making sure the agencies are well informed and the student is safe as possible. Counselors at the high school level carry more record-keeping responsibilities than the other levels of middle school and elementary due to graduation requirements, cum laude, special awards, graduation scholarships, and college applications. Since June 1st, 2015, we have enrolled over 344 students in our high schools. The ability to access school personnel in a timely manner eased the fear of transition for many of these students. Students and families were able to meet with their counselor and outline the next year's courses prior to the start of the first day of school. These families were given information about graduation requirements and post-secondary opportunities. To delay these conferences and transfer processes would jeopardize not only these students, but our current student body as well, and create a ripple effect that would be felt throughout the school year. No amount of preparation can eliminate the chaos associated with seeing that all students are properly placed at the beginning of the semester. We feel strongly that the savings to the district in eliminating these summer hours will generate enormous impact with the accolades the district currently celebrates.
Thank you, your time is up.
With all 3 high schools ranked in the top 25 in the state. Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you. Next up is Jeff Rusinski. Did I get that right?
Close.
Close.
Good evening. It was pretty close on the name, so I'll take it. Thank you. I would apologize. I'm not as prepared as everyone else. We just kind of found out about this evening as I was driving home, so I just made a quick few notes for myself. Just to introduce myself, my name's Jeff Wozansky. We just moved into the district. I mean, just moved into the district, just shortly before school opened. And because of that, we are very new. We're not here. This is our first time here. I just feel compelled to make a couple of comments about what we saw in the last board meeting. As far as the comments about the public has spoken with the ballot issue, I have to respectfully disagree with that. I think that the public reacted to 90 cents. I don't know that they actually really truly feel that they want kids crossing Highway 40, but they don't want to pay 90 cents. And we have retirees, we have people on fixed incomes and everything in the area. And I say we, even though we just moved here, I'm including myself. But we have people in this area with 90 cents, that's scary, that's a big amount. And if they don't really know what it is that they're fighting for, what it is that they're going to be paying for, well, then they're going to say no. That's just simply what it's going to do. And also the election itself, from my understanding, that was all that was on the ballot, or very other limited items on the ballot. Who's going to go out and vote for that? It's going to be people that are at home, people that aren't working, because they're retired or because of limited income situations. They're always going to vote to not spend money. Just pointing that out to you. Also, the comments about the pay cuts for the teachers, I think that perhaps was somewhat of a knee-jerk type of reaction. Teachers are what make a district go. They're what make, we moved here, and again, we just moved here. We moved here because of the school district. We didn't move anywhere else. We didn't move into a different part of the area. We moved here because of the reputation, and that's because of the teachers, and it's because of the school, and it's because of the board, and the quality of the academics that they're on. And if we start cutting the teachers and hurting the teachers, if just this much, just a little bit of the teachers' caring factor goes away, then we've hurt ourselves, and we can't do that. I mean, that's a huge thing. And if our teachers need to go to Riverview Gardens for a pay increase. Yeah, that really doesn't say all that much. So we need to be smart also with what we're doing. Yes, transportation is a big expense. Yes, the teachers' salaries are a big expense. But we also need to keep everything kind of in line. We're trying to swing a really big bat here. And maybe cutting a little here and a little there and being smart about a few things makes sense. Nobody wants their kids crossing Highway 40.
Thank you, your time is up.
Michelle Walker.
One of our own board members said it best in their campaign literature: the board sets the tone for the entire district. I'm sad to say the tone's been set. We've lost so much respect and we've lost the trust of our community because of the misinformation that was spread this past summer. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the vote for the current budget was unanimous. So I'm trying to still figure out, if we didn't have an issue with the budget, how do we suddenly have a spending problem and not a funding problem? It's sad for our students and the entire community that politics has gotten in the way of maintaining the quality of our schools. It's time we come together and do what's best for the students. As a parent and a community member, I couldn't sit idly and watch our community decline because of politics. I started an organization called FHSD Team. Together, everyone achieves more. We're hosting a community meeting September 16th, 2 weeks from tonight, right here in this room at 7 p.m. We've invited the board members and the administration to join us for an opportunity to tell the district's wonderful success story. Our community needs to feel included, and I hope we start that process 2 weeks from now. I've lined up some really great moderators for the evening, and I'm looking forward to a positive experience. County Councilman Mike Elam has agreed to be one of our moderators. The Greater St. Charles County Chamber of Commerce incoming chair, Missy Palich, has also agreed to be one of our moderators. And then we also have Carl Peterson, who's been on the District Finance Committee, I believe, for quite some time. He's a former board member for Ferguson-Florissant. He's also agreed to help out. Please join us, because we need to rebuild together. I'm sure there's lots of districts that are hoping we continue decreasing the morale in our district. We paid as a community to get, train, and retain the best teachers around. It would be quite a shame if the other districts benefited from our investment. Please be mindful with the reductions that you must implement, as your decisions will impact the property values probably more than Prop Y would have increased their taxes.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Heidi Fuentes?
I also have some chicken scratch notes here. So at this point, I have more questions maybe than answers or suggestions, but I just ask, I know that cuts are inevitable. It has to happen. It's not a choice, but I plead with you to choose wisely. As Michelle said, any of these cuts are going to hurt. Nobody's going to win here. But if we can make some wise decisions, we can hopefully minimize the damage, hopefully retain our property values. Very similar to him, I moved here in December solely for the purpose of living in Francis House School District. I did research for over a year on where I wanted to live. I didn't know the counselors were going to speak tonight, but my son is one of those children. He has Tourette syndrome, ADHD, OCD, a number of, I'm getting nervous, sorry, but a number of things, and Francis Howell offers above and beyond what any other district in the area has resources for these children. You have the Heritage Program, which he is not in, but I moved here just in case we might need that. And that is groundbreaking, and in speaking to other school districts, they told me they are using that as their model for how they want to to move, how they want to provide help for their students. So we've now gone from being the model and the guide to risking losing our teachers to these other school districts. Okay, so I don't want to run out of time in 3 minutes. In regards to buses, I understand that there may be some cuts. So it's my understanding that the average cost for a student per year was $876. If that's not correct, please correct me. It said there was 1,695 students that live less than 1 mile from the school. So if you eliminate that, that's $1.48 million. I couldn't find, and I'm sure it's out there somewhere, but how many students live between the 1 mile and the 3.5 mile mark? Because if we're talking about eliminating buses, it seems like there's 2 categories. There's a less than 1 mile and then the up to 3.5 miles. I would like to know if you're going to eliminate that, are you going to give parents the opportunity to pay for that? I myself would be in that 3.5 mile radius. I have 3 kids in 3 different schools, preschool, elementary, and high school. I work full time. I have no way to get 3 kids to 3 schools back and forth and keep my job. People mention carpooling, being new to the area. I don't know anyone. So I would like to know what options there will be. And then you run into the affordability factor. I know that they said the minimum charge is 90 days worth, which was $466 odd. Would there be monthly payments, quarterly payments? Would there be, how do you handle families with multiple children? You know, I can pay for 1 child monthly, but 3 kids, that gets pretty expensive. Families that are on the free and reduced lunch program, will there be accommodations made for them?
Thank you, your time is up.
Oh, I said it was getting close. Okay, just please be mindful of how your decisions are going to impact our community as a whole and not just.
Thank you, Heidi. James Fawcett?
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. My name is James Fawcett. My wife and I are both graduates of Francis Howell High School. We currently have an 11th grade son at Francis Howell Central and a 5th grade son at Fairmount. What prompted me to speak tonight was one comment in particular made by Board President Mark LaFada at the last board meeting, which I did attend. 11 months ago, during the October 2014 board meeting, Mr. LaFada stated, quote, "I really don't think we'll have a problem passing a tax increase in our district, at all. People like the product, they like what we have going on here," end quote. 1 month ago, that tax increase failed. During the last board meeting, while discussing the failure of Proposition Y, Mr. LaFada stated, quote, "I'm not going to poll the public to ask them why they didn't support it," end quote. That struck me as a strange thing for an elected official to say. The Missouri School Boards Association has published a document titled "A Few Basics of Board Service." On the first page, they provide a list of items that describe the role of school boards. The first item listed is to clarify district purpose. The second item on their list is connect with the community. My understanding of democratically elected officials is that their duty is to represent their constituents. And in order to do that, you need to not only be willing to, but you're responsible for engaging with the public. And engaging with us means more than simply hearing the loud few who speak the most often. My suggestion to the board is that the path of least resistance here may be to go ahead and engage with your constituents. Ask us why. The only reason for any board member to be surprised by the results of the last election is if you're not in tune with the community you serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Taylor?
Mr. President, directors, Madam Superintendent, and staff. My name is Richard Taylor. I've lived in the Francis Howell School District for about 32 years, long enough for my daughter and my grandson to graduate from Francis Howell High School, and I'm enormously satisfied with the quality of education that they receive. They've both done quite well in the workaday world. My grandson passed the ADSFAB test to join the military in the 98th percentile. and turn down college scholarships to do so. Having said that, been here for all those years. I now have no children in school. I pay about $3,000 a year in property taxes for schools only, and I'm very happy to do that. And I'm willing to pay more. But I voted no on the 90-cent tax levy. And even though I heard at least one and perhaps two board members say at the last meeting, not in these words, but essentially they didn't care why the vote was no. It was no. The public has spoken. They don't want a tax increase. I beg to differ. That's not what we said. What we said was we didn't want a 90-cent tax levy increase, which was about 17% by my calculations. My numbers may be off slightly because I can't get the real numbers, but it's close. We said we didn't want a 90-cent levy increase that had not been explained, had not been sold. And rest assured, when you want a 17% tax increase, you are selling. And by the way, you don't sell to the buying public by threatening bad things to them if they don't vote your way. You sell by making them understand, helping them understand, allowing them to understand why it's necessary and how prudently it's going to be used. That wasn't done. I didn't know there was a levy increase on the ballot until 2 weeks before the vote. No one contacted me to give me a single reason why I should vote for it. By the way, no one contacted me to recommend I vote against it either. But I've come to the board meeting since that time, and I'm astonished at some of the things I've heard. I've heard that you would seriously consider reducing bus service. Now, I don't know how you take a tax levy that today pays for bus service for all students, take that away from some arbitrary portion of those students, and tell them if they want bus service, they can pay $460 a school year for it, and not consider that a tax increase on those parents. If I'm one of those parents, you just increase my taxes $460, but not the guy that lives a block maybe down the road from me. I think you'll hear more about that from lawyers if you try to do that.
Thank you.
I hear serious discussion about going back to the teachers.
We have to adhere to spend time on it. We've got other people that like to finish tonight, so thank you for your comments.
I'll be back.
Aaron Kramer?
Hi, my name's Erin Kramer. I have 2 middle school students in the district. I just wanted to let the board know that the reason that I'm here tonight is because I had multiple constituents, multiple residents of the Francis Howell School District come to me over the past couple of weeks and tell me how embarrassed and ashamed they are at the board members' behavior. It sounds like the people on both sides of the argument are not treating people respectfully and they are not behaving appropriately. I'm here because I feel like in the past I have trusted my board and I don't feel like that anymore, and it's disappointing as a person who lives in this district.
Good evening, everyone. I don't know if this is appropriate. This gentleman still has things to say that I have to say to ready for the next board meeting. Sir, I would yield my time to you if that's appropriate. You can continue your comments.
I really didn't come here to offend anybody, but if I do.
It's easier to ask for permission than exactly forgiveness and permission, but feel free to take that time.
But I'm not apologetic. I know about budget work. I'm retired from a major communications company, and two of the things that I did during my 35 years there was manage both revenue and operating expense budgets bigger than yours. I know that's a tough job, but I also know it can be done. But it has to be done with unity. And it cannot be done by telling the public one thing and really wanting something else. And it can't be done by wasting $250,000 by having a special ballot issue that then fails. Maybe you get away with that if you sell the initiative, but you don't get away with that if you spend $250,000 and then blow the initiative. That's bad management, folks. I know a little bit about education. I have a granddaughter who's a public school teacher in the state of Kansas. I have a daughter who's a university level professor in the state of Missouri. When I told them I voted no on the tax levy, they tried to divorce me. But among the things that I've heard was that you would seriously consider going to a 4-day school week. I frankly don't know if that's been done successfully anywhere, but I can't imagine that you really think that's the solution to this problem. I think that's a waste of time to discuss. I hear you talk seriously about meeting with the teachers and the union to ask them to forgive some of the contract signed salary that they're receiving. They don't deserve that. We pay that money because we want the best, and we've got them, and we use them, and they educate our students, and we need to keep them, and we need to support them. I don't think you want to be known as the board who negotiates in bad faith. And I don't think you can call asking them to give the money back as anything other than bad faith. I wouldn't want to be part of that, and I'd like for you to not be part of that. There's an easier solution to this. If I understand your numbers right, you're looking to cut somewhere around $10 million from next school year's budget because you're that many dollars short. I believe, and even though some of you didn't want to ask the public why they voted no, I did. Now, I didn't ask them all, but I've asked a couple of hundred. Uniformly, they said if the tax levy was half what you proposed, they'd have voted for it, even though you didn't tell them why it was needed. Now, by my calculations, that'll raise you $9.78 million. And if you need another million or two, I can tell you from experience, there's not a $230 or $40 million budget anywhere that you can't cut another couple of $1 million out of without sinking the ship. And old people like me at this point would say, it's Smokey and the Bandit time. You got a long way to go and a short time to get there. Bus service away from people. You don't need to cut teacher salaries. You don't need to tell a kid he can't play football. You need to raise about $10 million in tax revenue, and if you can't do it, call me, I'll come help you. And I need to answer the question. I said I wasn't going to name names, but I want to tell all of them. There's a lady over there that I don't know, named Amy McEvoy. I'm not the smartest person in this room. She is. Somebody better start listening to her.
Thank you. I wish I had an opportunity to implement one and raise $10 million. That'd be awesome. But we have business at hand tonight, and
you don't know till you try, Mark.
I understand that we're going to have that conversation tonight. So, Board, we have on the agenda. session, so there's no action items tonight, it's just discussion only, and yes. So just for order and discussion, just wanna make sure that we had, something in front of us so that we can talk about each individual item, then move on to the next item, and then, yes. Oh, that's right, I forgot all about that. And we will do that too. Meeting ready? Sorry about that.
Good evening, Dr. Sloan, Executive Cabinet, President LaFada, and Board of Education. I've been listening for the last couple of meetings. I've listened to patrons both for and against a tax levy, and I've listened to board members discuss cuts and putting a tax levy on the ballot in the near future for a lesser amount. I am a teacher in the district, the president of the Teachers Association, as well as a patron and a parent. This school district and its successes are important to me. FHEA wants to thank all of the people that worked tirelessly to pass a tax levy that would have benefited the students of the Francis Howell School District. I will say that I am confused when one of our board members talks about this being a spending problem, not a revenue problem. Yet, Mr. Summer, you have consistently voted for the budget and raises for the employees of the district. I find it disturbing that you voted to keep travel money to go to the MSBA conference, but you don't mind cutting employees' salaries. I know this has been said before, but as a board member of the MSBA board, you should know better than anyone that the one vote, one board rule. Yet you violated this when you attended meetings talking against the levy. The people that will suffer here are our students. The suffering will not be short-term, it will last for years to come. We will have wasted money training people that won't stay with us. We will no longer be the top companies to work for. This is a sad time in Francis Howell. Do not blame the staff for this problem. The board needs to learn to work together. There were also comments about going out after a tax levy in the near future. Again, the decision was made to go out after 90 cents. Just because that wasn't the amount you personally wanted, doesn't mean that now we should go out for an amount you are okay with. The amount of energy to work on a tax levy during your own time and still do our jobs during school hours and our own family time simply isn't fair. We tried to pass a levy and the patrons spoke. And I do appreciate what you have said, but people said, we don't want this, and it wasn't by a small margin. I guess it's time to make the best out of a bad situation. It is unfortunate that this board couldn't put their politics aside and work together. Now we need to roll up our sleeves and try to stay as far away from classroom cuts as possible. We need to protect our kids in this.
Anybody from Local 1 here like to speak tonight? Administrators Association? Fee spot? Anybody we missed during patron comments? So, board, for the purpose of work session, and we'll just stay in this setting rather than rearrange the room. I've prepared a kind of a document for us to kind of follow through on the work session and talk about the lists that are in front of us, pros, cons, your comments. But let's try and work through each item that we have in front of us, and then move on to the next item. So I'm gonna open up for the budget reductions for 2015-2016 that have been prepared by administration. Notice that there's one item there that has a highlighted yellow portion, reducing transportation second semester. That has been raised to $2.5 million, and it's also reflected on the 2017 budget as what the savings is. Now, this is purely an estimate of what the cost would be. Those route rates have not been negotiated, but we feel pretty strongly that we get closer to that savings than the $1 million that was originally presented. Just didn't have enough information at the time that was available under that contract. So I know that a motion was made last meeting to cut the $1 million that's available. Reducing transportation has been also added to that 2015-16 scenario. The one thing that I just want the group here to understand, it's here tonight, and I appreciate you guys being here and appreciate all the comments. We don't receive any reimbursement for any students under 1 mile, so there's really no savings there. When you're talking about cutting the 1 mile radius, under 1 mile. So there's no reimbursement from the state at all. The reason that this item is being discussed, frankly, is because it represents a good portion of our budget outside salaries. We used to get a whole lot more in reimbursement from the state on transportation. Today, we receive about 20%, so our reimbursement rate is a lot lower than we'd like it to be. So therefore, it's a large line item. And frankly, it's something that the board has discussed and talked about as a possible cut. Frankly, because it doesn't affect inside the classroom, what's happening with teachers and whatnot, programs. It's transportation. By law, we're required to transport the students up to 3.5 miles, or 3.5 miles or more. That's what state statute says. So that that is that's what we're required to do. Anything above that is a cost to the district, and so there's the items there that are available for this year are in front of us, and including that possibility for the transportation, which has been updated. So, would any board member like to speak on this particular item? Mr. Lynn?
I was just wondering how it went from 1 million to 2.5 million, and then from 3 million to 5 million.
Mr. LaPlante, I'll ask that question to the board and the public here tonight. The discussions about transportation began well before the election was completed, and we made some very rough estimates at that time. We did not want to potentially overinflate the amount of savings that we would realize as a result of changes to our transportation system, primarily because we can do some quick paper calculations about the potential number of students who live within a particular radius, but that doesn't tell the full story, because we also have to think about, so once we change that, how many triple tier routes are going to become double or single tier routes that have different rates associated with them? How long might those routes be in terms of time travel, which would have an impact on the number of buses that we would need? And how many of the students who live closer than 3.5 miles might have transportation as a related service as part of their IEP, which that was required to provide that transportation. So it's much more involved than just taking a look at taking a look at the addresses, trying to draw a radius from the school and figure out who lives 3.5 miles. There's a lot more detail to that. In addition to the factors I just discussed, there are also factors about
We have different route rates based on the different sizes of buses that are used. And so once the routing would be done based on whatever scenario might be decided, we'd have to take a look at how many 84 passenger buses can we use and how many 70 passenger buses will we use. There are different route rates for that, which will have an impact on the amount of savings or cost reduction that we might be able to realize. So having had more time to work with all those various scenarios, we believe that the full year impact of going to 3.5 mile limit is probably closer to $5 million. And so that is what the update has been. And I think those really are the factors there. When we began that conversation, we wanted to be very conservative in that estimate, and we've had some time to refine that over the past couple of weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. Any other discussion on the reduction considerations for 15, 16? Ms. McAvoy?
I'm gonna state again, could we lose copy paper, reduce copy paper? Sure, but shouldn't we do that anyway? Just a thing. Could we reduce building budgets by 10%? Maybe there's this or that we could maybe do without. Is it all gonna fall back and hurt students? Yes, probably. And that's ultimately my goal sitting here on this board. What here is gonna hurt students? Say all you want, no, I didn't vote for the 90 cents. Because I can say, I'm saying now I told you so.
That's good.
The pulse of the public did not go out against a tax increase. I did not go out against it. I voiced my opinion at our board meeting. People knew. We didn't try to talk about, but an hour. And it was very adamant, it was going to be a 4-3 decision, and that's the way we left it. And I honestly think we do not need to decrease anymore. We already did 8 million. I already did that in May, knowing all of this was going to occur. That we were going to have a deficit if the tax increase failed. What was going to happen? I knew that. I voted a year ago no on the budget because it was a $22 million deficit. And I said we should be doing something now. And nobody listened. We cut 8 million. We're going to be okay, I think, this year. Maybe $1 million or 2, maybe 3. We have been way in the hole more than that. I don't ever say, oh well, let's give up, let's just take our losses and go. Nobody won here. And right now the biggest losers are students, and we're talking about, let's cut all these things. We wanna make sure we don't touch students. Let's not touch students. Principal insight. Okay, we hire our principals. I'd say we have pretty good principals. Is that because of principal insight? Our principals are what run our buildings. They have the pulse on our buildings. They are the end result on any test scores or any climate scores, or it falls on them. They know it. Is that something we get rid of? Yeah, it's only $7,000. But I know we have lots of people who try to get a principal's job in this school district. So it's not like interviewing or looking through 10 or 20 resumes. It's looking through a lot of resumes. Parent involvement supports. Parent involvement is one of the or the connectivity is very low. You're on wireless, you're off wireless, you're on wireless, kids are taking tests and all of a sudden, what happened? It's gone. Oh, gotta start all over. Let's try again. 20 minutes later, oh, let's try again. Okay, we can't have that. All of our assessments are on computers now. Can't have that. That's a big item, $350,000. Who's it gonna hurt? Students, teachers. So there's a lot on there that what is it doing is hurting students and teachers. I didn't talk about drug testing. It's a small amount too, 20,000. But gosh, who does it, that really hurts students. Students that might need help, that we could catch that they were using drugs. Or it deters maybe some from not using drugs because we are drug testing randomly. I honestly believe that cutting another $1 million out of this budget is not the best thing for students or for teachers or for our community in this district. I believe there are other ways of doing this.
Any other discussion on this item? Okay, so that'll be for consideration at next meeting. We'll move on to budget reductions for 2016, 2017. And that's basically clicked on the other page, and again, that includes a bigger number for transportation based on what we believe is the cost estimate for reducing transportation to the required state statute of 3.5 miles. So obviously that number down there would allow for about $2 million surplus based on these considerations. So, you know, what I've always said in when you're talking about budget reduction considerations, I rely on our staff that has to make sure that kids are educated, and when we're basically don't have the revenue to support the program that we currently have, then we have to make some reductions. So with that surplus that's sort of projected, I think that there's an opportunity for some of these items to be considered as potential add-backs. Obviously, we do not want to cut anything more than to balance our budget. Don't want to cut anything, but certainly would not go any further than that, or would recommend that we do. So my recommendation would be for the administration, as the revenue numbers come in, as their budget numbers come in, they would have the latitude to put, or at least recommend items to go forward for the purpose of planning. Regardless of how we achieve or not achieve additional revenue, we still have to prepare for next year, and that starts right now. We begin that budget process for next year. We issue teachers' contracts in April, is that correct? And
By May, we have to,
by May, but we start that process, and it's a very lengthy process. So, there's things that could happen between now and then, but based on the considerations here, this is what the district has recommended to us. But certainly we to restore programs that least affect, our children in the classroom. So, we're looking for a balanced budget. I think the board is. When you're talking about the planning period, you've got a certain period of time in which you have to plan. If there's additional revenue, if there's additional cost savings, I would yield to the administration to come up with a recommendation to the board to tell us or recommend what should be restored or what should be kept. And this be a working list for those involved, because they did develop this, and I respect their work. So, Mr. Sumner?
Thank you. Obviously, the big change that we're seeing now that we didn't see 2 weeks ago is the adjustment on the transportation costs. And I guess that's the main reason for the difference of the reduction in the amount of certified personnel that's being brought forward at this time. Is that correct? Because this is only talking about 136.
I don't have that number in front of me from last time, but I believe that's the same number.
It is the same number?
The bottom line is a different number than before.
Okay. And just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, the projected budget for the fiscal year 17 currently has an $11.9 million deficit. And we have in front of us 13.9 million worth of proposed cuts. Is that?
That's correct. This document was updated. The highlighted one just shows the additional $2 million in potential reduction for changing transportation. And so that flowed right to the bottom line. And I think that Mr. Lafada's indication was that the administration would have some latitude within this list to trim only what was necessary to achieve a balanced budget. And if it was something less than $11.9 million, we would use this list to be our starting point, but we would perhaps not do everything on the list in order to only arrive at the amount needed to balance the budget for 2016-17.
Okay. And then just so I have a full understanding on the proposal to reduce transportation, and so the entire board has an understanding of this, the information provided is for not providing transportation less than 3.5 miles for any student. We're not reimbursed for any student that currently lives within 1 mile of the school. But I believe also there's probably very little additional cost there because our contract with the bus company is by routes and not necessarily by stops. Is there a fair assessment to make?
That is a fair assessment.
Okay. But if we would make the cut, including those students that live less than 1 mile from school, and somewhere down the road we would want to reinstate that as part of a proposed tax levy to the community would have to vote by a 2/3 margin to reinstate transportation for those kids less than 1 mile from school. As a board, we could do it between 1 mile and 3.5. It would take a vote of the entire community by 2/3 to reinstate the students less than 1 mile if that's part of a future tax levy. Is that?
That's correct.
That's correct, okay. Okay. So that helps solidify my thoughts on the transportation. And the only other thing that I'm going to say briefly is I think I'm in agreement with Ms. McAvoy is for the current year, which is the budget I did vote on. I think we're in fine shape. Even though there's a proposed deficit currently of less than 10 million, I think once the final numbers come in, we're still going to be within our board policy. We're still going to have 15% reserves. And it's going forward where there's more of an urgency or a need to have these discussions, whatever they might be. So it's my understanding that the proposals for the 15-16 school year have temporarily been put on hold. But I think we're in a much better position. We're in a position for the 16 school year that we don't currently make any proposed cuts.
Ms. Bice?
It hesitates to go back in history, but Ms. McAvoy did, and so to be fully transparent to the audience here, we're both up for re-election in April. I think you all should know that. And that said, if you go way back to 2012, there was a rollback. And I think I was the only one that voted against the rollback, because looking at the projections at that point in time, it was projected that we were going to keep falling shorter and shorter. Am I remembering that correctly, Kevin?
I believe that's correct.
So had that not occurred, we would be how much more or less in debt than we, or where would we be?
The rollback in 2012, it may have actually been 2011-12 fiscal year was a nickel, so that would have been $1 million.
Okay.
It was the prior years when there were the larger rollbacks.
Right. So just in full transparency, I just want to verbally and publicly state that. I also want to just state that based upon the information that we were given at the time of our workshop, I think we came to the best conclusion that we could come to at the time. And again, as I've stated before, the budget isn't like, the public school budget isn't quite like a business, and I appreciate what was said about that, but it is very fluctuating. At times you can't predict it. I guess in a way it's similar because you can't predict customer, you know, and what that's going to be, but it can be very difficult at times. And so, and we have a financial guy here who's won award after award after award after award, and his fiscal responsibility at his level. So when information is brought to us, we have to make certain decisions based upon the information that we have. I just need to say that. So now we're at another place. We have different information. We need to move forward. And again, as many people have said, we need to move forward as a board. And we need to move forward as one voice. And we're not going to make the decision tonight, but I just want to assure everybody here that you have all been heard, the emails that have come in. And again, every decision that I have the philosophy of making is always, is it good for kids? So just ask that question. Transportation cuts, is it good for kids? And so on and so forth. So I don't know that I have any more questions or comments, but I know that I can confirm and commit that any vote or any decision that's going to be made, that's the question I'm going to be asking. Thank you.
Mr. Lang.
I just wanted some more information on this project, Lead the Way expansion, if you could. What, you know, more than just project Lead the Way expansion, what does it entail?
Every year we add some additional classes to our current pathways of courses. So we add, for example, we've added a biomed class every year, and next year I believe our PLTW expansion course is a computer science course. So we would be looking to expand that. We started year one this year. Next year we would offer the next course in the sequence, so those kids eventually will be able to take more courses in the computer science pathway of PLTW. So we'd have to put that on hold. Those courses can be expensive depending on the class and the requirements for each of those different courses.
Thank you. Ms. Coe.
So thank you. We've heard a lot this evening about what we don't want to cut, and I can speak for myself here, and probably most of the board members. There's not anything on this list that we want to cut. So it's a very difficult decision. You've heard tonight at the podium, you could ask everybody sitting next to you, you each have a different opinion about what's important on this list and what's not. And that's based on your current situation. Do you have a preschooler, an elementary school, a middle school child, a high school child, no child in the district? And you see things from your perspective. And we try to represent that. So I just wanted to talk about today and our approved budget with no additional reductions, because we have done $8 million for this year. We're still at a projected deficit for this year for almost $10 million. You can say why the tax increase did not pass. There's numerous reasons it didn't pass. We have almost $10 million deficit this year. Yes, we have reserves. Those reserves cover our salaries until we receive the money from the state and the federal government. this will be the first year in a long time where we're gonna borrow money, from what I understand from the last board meeting, to cover that salary. So this is a serious situation. So you can say we didn't do enough communication ahead of time for the community to understand. We've received feedback that we've provided too much information. Every time I turned around, there was a sign, and every time I turned around, there was a list of cuts. And we've heard the exact opposite. I knew nothing about the tax increase. I knew nothing about the cuts. So where we stand today is we have almost $10 million deficit in our budget. The tax increase did not pass. If we do not make cuts, we will reduce our fund balance by $10 million. And next year we have almost a $12 million deficit budgeted. Cuts have to be made, and there's nothing on this list that we want to cut. So I'm gonna tell you, probably no different than Dr. Weiss. We're gonna do the best we can. We've heard a lot of things. I brought a list of things that I've heard from the community. A lot of people have reached out to me via email and Facebook in different ways, because we've asked for innovative ideas. These are the ideas that are on the table right now. We're still looking for innovative ideas to help us. One idea is energy savings. And I'm not expecting an answer from anyone this evening, just bringing forward the ideas that I've heard from the community. Is there opportunity to increase or decrease the temperature in a school or the schools by 1 or 2 degrees? Would that make an impact on the budget? Do we have the opportunity not to do evening sports? Yes, we're probably passionate about our Friday night lights, but there's other school districts that do sports without the electric bill. Do we have the opportunity for offering early retirement? Do we have the opportunity to reduce the use of subs? Do we have the opportunity to reduce general expenditures in buildings such as brought forward on the list as copy paper and other items? Keep in mind that all these are valuable ideas and should be looked into, but we're still talking about $10 million deficit in our budget today. So I just want to make sure that even though we're talking about what we don't want to cut, decisions will have to be made.
Thank you, Ms. Crowe. Ms. McElroy.
Kevin, I wanted to ask a question about ADA, and so with transportation. So I might have some follow-up questions to you as I talk with you. I know that last year we were given a little scenario, state of the state, last night at the PTO meeting. They talked about attendance rate, and that we have a great attendance rate at the school. And but one day last year when there was sleet, we had buses, kids came to school, it was a 76% decrease, or the attendance rate was 76%. So I know that ADA changed, correct, on how it's now by minute by minute. I know my school district had a big discussion about that and how we sign kids in and when they leave and all that stuff. And then I understand, is it the ADA we get is 2 years from 2 years, the attendance from 2 years ago or a year ago? Is that?
The current formula allows the school district to use the highest ADA of the current year or either of the 2 preceding years. So for school districts who are declining in enrollment, it gives you a chance to more gradually adjust to that decline in enrollment. And for districts that are growing rapidly, you can use the current year ADA. So DESE takes a look at that number, and they always put in the highest number that you're able to use. Districts who are growing sometimes need to make an estimate, and so DESE wouldn't have that number. But yes, we are currently using our second preceding year ADA. We've done that for a number of years, just because we're adjusting to that. As we shared with the board, many times previously, the slight decline in the number of students across the district.
Okay, so what I am worried about with transportation is bad weather days. And you never know what you're gonna get. Last year was remarkably great, but I wonder wonder if other schools in our district had that same 76% attendance, that drop. So it makes me think, I'm just starting, I'm trying to think, okay, pros, cons, trying to list that. I wish we had a chart paper to do that for almost a lot of these things. But, so I'm wondering if 3.5 miles less, or 3.49 or whatever it is, and under, and we have some sleet in the morning, but it's gonna be great the rest of the day. How many kids will not get to school? And our ADA goes down. And then how does that going to affect in the future if our enrollment declines? Looking at number, I'm trying to figure out here what is, if that is beneficial for us, losing ADA and dropping transportation. Now, transportation might be more money the better decrease, but then we'll also lose ADA, but it's still not as much as the transportation. I'm just trying to put this in my head. And then I'm thinking about, okay, if kids aren't in school, what is that, how does that affect our test scores, our grades, our accreditation? And, I think about how Middle and kids coming from the Danny Boone area when it's bad weather and parents trying to get their kids there by 9 when not Middle. Yeah, Middle. When it gets there at 8, but you have people carpooling maybe or whatever, and like, oh, I don't want you to ride with that. I'm just trying to think of all those things. And when I do, I go, I just don't think that is the right decision. I think there are other decisions for us to do, but I wanted everybody to kind of think about that and think about that ADA and how that affects. And I don't know if you agree or if you guys are worried about that ADA, that attendance rate dropping for transportation, but I think that's a conversation to talk about with attendance possibly dropping and that 90-90 that we have to occur for accreditation not to happen. So I don't know if you'd like to speak to that.
I can say that we have not had that specific discussion in length, although we have talked about weather is going to impact that. We know that. We don't know what will the weather be this year, and will we call snow days differently than we have in the past? Will the threshold be lower for that? So I don't know that we've costed out. I think there's not only do we have to think about the weather, but another factor that impacts attendance regularly in every school district is just the cold and flu season that we have. So we see that spread through our district every year where we have, peaks and valleys of various schools going through a flu season. So yes, it does impact the school district. Would the savings be greater by us reducing transportation? I don't know what the cost of all that, but I would imagine they would be.
Reducing transportation to 3.5 miles would generate more savings than you would lose in ADA, but you're kind of losing, you would still be losing money on ADA. We could make some rough estimates. We could assume 5 snow days. We could assume 76% attendance rate at the buildings, as opposed to a 90% attendance rate on a typical day. It's a little hard to adjust for what that might actually be. Would all of that be attributable to bus transportation? You have to take a look at, what was our attendance rate on a snow day last year, or maybe 2 years ago, when we had a number of snow days. Was our attendance rate different even though we provided transportation? So I wouldn't want to over-adjust for that, but I believe it's fair to say, there's no question that loss of transportation services would result in a reduction in our ADA, which would result in a reduction in the state aid that we receive. The magnitude of that, probably, there's some room for interpretation there, but we could, certainly take a look at what that might mean. Ms. Ferguson?
Yes. Going through all of these cuts, it just seems, your head is spinning. I really appreciate
appreciate the patrons and that who have contacted me and given me different ideals, because without the ideals, we may not think of those, and you're our patrons, and we work for you also, and what you come up with, I wanna check everything out. But I wanna go back to the bus thing again. And no one's talked about lately, or this time, what is our unintended consequences from this? We heard from a patron that she wouldn't be able to get her kids to or from school. She's new to the area. Will that bring our vacation station? Is that unintended consequences? Is that going to spur that on? Will we have to make concessions for that? And would that just snowball the whole thing?
I believe that if we were to change our transportation model, where we only transported to 3.5 miles, we could anticipate that there would be an increased need for after-school services or vacation station program.
Right, that's self-sufficient anyways, and I do understand that.
Right, but to kind of echo a point that was made earlier, that would be, maybe it's not my place to say.
I think there is no doubt about it, that transportation is going to affect things. There's no doubt about it. We have to understand that we can't sit here tonight and think that cutting transportation, that school is gonna go on, and kids are gonna come, that things are gonna be we're gonna have an adjustment of a week and everything's gonna be fine. There's going to be disruption to families, and it's going to be, weather related. I mean, there are a lot of things that we haven't lived. We haven't lived that, and we'll be living them for the first time. So I think there are things that sitting here tonight, we don't even know to anticipate. So as far as ramping up vacation station and some of those are things that we know we will have to do, and we'll have to begin to work on that one as soon as the decision is made to reduce transportation. But I think there is no way around the fact that it will impact our core business.
Mr. Lane?
The busing issue affects me personally, but it's a big ticket item, and we have a big deficit, so we don't want to cut it, but it's hard to swallow, but some things just have to be done without cutting any more staff or personnel. It's a tough decision we have to do, or possibly do. So just thought I'd say that.
Okay, not seeing our lights on, so that'll be an action item next meeting as well. And so we'll move on to ballot initiative. And before you have the election calendar. I don't think we've got the information on the cost of the election. We'll certainly make sure that we know that beforehand, before we make any decision on any ballot initiative, if there is one. And I do want to restate and state again that, we asked the voters for a tax increase, but we only asked for what we needed. We didn't ask for a larger amount. We asked just to balance the budget, because we've cut $8 million from this budget already this school year, and we're cutting 11.9 from next year's budget. So we asked for what we need. We didn't ask for a penny more. As I hear tonight, people don't want any cuts. So that would lead me to believe that you would support a 90-cent tax increase. If you don't want any cuts, then you have to support a 90-cent tax increase, or not. And the voters were pretty clear. It was a 2-1 vote. It wasn't close. I don't know necessarily if 45 cents would have made a difference, and 10 million cuts. I mean, we didn't go out for that. taxes, we discussed a backup plan. And the backup plan was, if we didn't pass a tax increase, these are some items that we needed to look at. And we only did that in a work session, and, came up with a list of, cuts that would least affect the classroom. Therefore, we, once again, we didn't ask for more than we needed. We asked for $20 million tax increase, and we had $8 million in cuts this year, $11.9 million in cuts for next year, or maybe less. So there are some opportunities. What I would like to see, and I'm sure that every board member will weigh in, is, kind of like they do down in Jeff City, is here's a list of signatures on what we'll support, or here's a community group that organizes and comes to the board and says, we're interested in a tax increase, we would like to help out and help the district move forward. A lot of the work was done by teachers, administrators, some board members, some community members, but certainly not a big number of community members. That's the group of people that you're trying to get to support your levy. I don't think this district has a spending problem. I don't think this district has a budgeting problem. We went through a 6-year recession. Everyone was part of that. During that time period, we didn't ask the voters for a tax increase because we probably knew the answer. It was going to be no. Because they were having to tighten their belts, the district did too. So there's been a number of cuts before we got to this year. Several years. I don't recall them off the top of my head, but there's been several years that we've had to reduce our budgets and make cuts just to balance and move forward. So when you don't know what your revenue stream is going to be, and you don't know what your opportunity from the state is going to be, it's very difficult to sit in this chair. I challenge anybody that wants to. There's 2 opportunities to run for the board. It's not an easy job. Very difficult. So I'm open to hear the public's concerns. I'm open to listen to ideas, and I'm open to, and I'm sure the board is welcome opportunities to increase our revenues. I don't like to make cuts. I would like to just tear up this piece of paper and move down the road, and I certainly would like to have had that tax increase passed, but it didn't. But as a responsible member of this community, or a responsible board member, we have a job to do to balance the budget based on the information that we have in front of us. And right now, I don't have a lot of information about what the public will do or not do. It's very difficult for me to gauge that by a room full of people. I certainly can gauge it to understand what they're thinking if, several people come and there's a petition of several people signed saying, we will support a levy of this amount. We had 12,000 people that voted against it. We had 6,000 people that voted for it. That tells me that we don't have support right now to raise taxes in our our school district to balance our budget. So, I'm open for suggestions. I'm not sure that, you know, the time is right to ask the public right now, because we just did, and we got our answer. But, you know, as one board member, and a board member that's been around for 15 years, involved in the school district on committees at the board level, it was pretty overwhelming. And, you know, I certainly would entertain the thought of increasing our revenues, but I don't have a magic wand to get people to go to the polls and vote yes. I wish I did, but it's not available. So, you know, I'm gonna open it up for discussion. I don't know if it's gonna be an action item. We just have to make that decision tonight if we wanna talk about that as an action item, for the next meeting. But I certainly, think it's worth talking about. Ms. Bice?
Just a few comments. Again, I'm gonna reiterate the fact that we gave a rollback in 2012, that we knew what the forecast was at that time. And every time I sit up here in the past few months, I get more and more frustrated about that. I'm in the business of education. That's my everyday job. Actually educating people to be superintendents. And I can tell you my conversations over the course of the past 6 months, asking about different experiences in those different districts. Superintendents have told me that they did that one time.
And they did not like it.
Minutes are up. Anyways, I'll put my teacher voice on. They said they never did it again. And so, you know, in 2012, I had that mindset, you know, we know the money's coming in, we know the money's going to be needed, why are we giving it back? The mindset at the time was to be fiscally, you know, to show the taxpayers that we're fiscally responsible. Well, we were already being fiscally responsible. I think it would have been fiscally responsible to have kept that money knowing that the budget was going to need it. But we didn't, and that's fine. I've never said anything about that since 2012. But because things have been said from this stage up here, I am stating that. That said, when we had our conversations in our work sessions, whenever we were talking about how much should it be, how much should it be, it was historical data. We went by historical data. And if anybody wanted to listen and look at those conversations, I wish that you would, because it wasn't flippant. Nobody came to those conclusions. It was a long night, if I remember. And one of the historical reasons why it went with the amount that it went was because historically you ask for that amount so you don't have to keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back. And that way you can give the rollbacks if you need to. So, you know, those were all parts of the conversation. I'm not saying I agreed or disagreed. I know at one point in time I definitely questioned it. I remember and recall the conversation. But again, we all voted at the end of the day with the best information that we had. We're all going to move forward with the best information that we have. And I do believe this board has kids' interests at heart. And so, but, you know, when we do make decisions, it is, you know, when we talk, when we have these work groups, it's based on historical information from people that we very much trust as we move forward. I don't want people to be, I think the good thing about it is that the ballot item got people involved, and so people are coming, and that is awesome to see, because I can't tell you how many times we've had board meetings where after the guest, you know, and the special speakers, you know, then this place is pretty empty. I've been on the board for 6 years, and so this is awesome. So anytime we can get more involvement, I think it's great, and so I'm really happy that people are here. I just think that we belabored this so much. We've talked about transportation so much, we just need to get on with it. That's my opinion about what we need to do. Because, you know, we can ask all our questions. I'm sorry, we've had weeks to ask these questions of these hardworking people taking tax dollar money, by the way, from them every time we ask these questions, every time they have to field these questions during the work week. It takes their time away from your students or your teachers as support systems, and we've had weeks to ask this, and we're I still see again and hearing the same questions. We should know the answers by now. So I think we need to move on with it and make the decision as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Ms. McElroy?
We went out for 90 cents, but I truly believe we needed $1.20. Why? Look at our projections. Every single 5-year projection has no salary increase. 90 cents would not have added to that. It would have left it same. We would have had to keep cutting and keep cutting to change that expenditure. Why did we go for 90 cents, not $1.20? My firm belief is you go out for what you think you can get and what you can explain and what you can show. And with the tax initiatives that have been going around the entire area, ones that pass, ones that don't pass, why, how? Do they go back out for one right away? Most of them do, yes. If they don't pass. So that's why I firmly believe that in April, why not? We are already paying for an election. Already paying for an election. It's no cost. We're already there. We already do it. And whether I run or not, I'm willing to put a tax increase on the ballot. Usually nobody wants to do that if you're gonna run. Not worried about it. Not worried about pleasing any group. I'm worried about doing what's best for the public, for the community, knowing the pulse of the public, talking to that pulse, knowing, geez, what's the rationale for doing 90 cents? What's the rationale for not doing $1.20? What's the rationale for not doing something less? So it didn't pass. We need to move on. We need to not cut. We need to increase our revenue. We need to increase our revenue. The only way to do that is to get something that's better than nothing. Something is better than nothing. Okay, we lost. Move on. Something is better than nothing. It's not gonna hurt if it doesn't pass again. What? I guess we haven't lost anything, right? But not trying at all. $0.45. You look at what was given us. 45 cents added to next year would give us $10 million over. We're looking at cutting 13 million, almost 14 million, counting transportation. $0.45, I don't think we would even do that, 45 cents. Yes, I know 90 cents would have just fixed everything. It wouldn't have fixed everything. $1.20
45 cents will help us keep and retain highly qualified teachers in this district for next year by not cutting more staff. I think approximately 36, we have 39.6 personnel and 55 certified. We don't need to do that. We need to go out for another tax increase.
Ms. Ferguson?
Amy, I don't disagree with you. Over the course of the past couple weeks, I've had a lot of different conversations, of course, with different people. Several of the patrons have commented, but one stuck out, that every year he automatically knows his taxes go up, so he readjusts his budget at home to make sure that he can take care of his excess taxes. And the question was asked to me, why is it that this school district historically goes out like every 10 years? And it's always a big deal, it's always a big amount. Why couldn't we incorporate that with our strategic planning? And he called it a living document, that it just, every 2 years, it just went on, just to keep up and keep pace with our teachers' salaries, our education, our Wi-Fi, computers, all these things, so that we can keep adding, because everything's going up. We all know that. Cost of food is going up, everything is going up. So why can't we be more proactive on this and get it together so that we can do something like that? And not 90 cents, of course, that's probably what we need at this point, but so that it can be adjusted accordingly and people would agree with it and can keep that revenue source coming in.
I'd just like to respond to that. Just, you know, it's not easy to predict what your local revenues are going to be, and it's not easy to predict what your state revenues are going to be. It's a shot in the dark. So, to your point, I don't disagree. But during a downturn in the economy, you know, we still maintain the school district. We had to make some cuts. But when you don't know what property values are going to be, and you don't know what your state aid is going to be, you can't really have a consistent number to give to the public on what the need is. So you know, it's if we could predict our revenues and we could predict our state aid, it'd be much easier to have that sort of program in place, but we don't. You know, there was a point in time when property values soared in the school district. Everyone was a part of that appreciation. There ended up being a downturn, and people took a hit on their properties. But you know, to have a planned tax increase every year is difficult because you don't know what you're asking for every year. So if you want to be consistent, it's very difficult to be consistent in that environment because you don't know what you're going to get. As the state legislature changes, so does state funding. So does state aid on transportation. When I first got on the board, we got reimbursed 40% for transportation. Today we get 20%. So there's a big difference in what you're working with every year. So to go out every year would be problematic in that you wouldn't know what your reassessment is at some times. So
Wasn't stated every year, but
okay. But I certainly don't disagree with the planning part as far as working in 5-year increments. But you're predicting what the economy is going to be. And we're not economists. Everyone here has a job, and we all have specialties in our positions. And I can't predict what the economy is going to do. If I did, I wouldn't be sitting here today. And it's, so for us to, you know, to predict what the future is gonna look like, it's not easy. If it were consistent, I don't disagree with the gentleman that spoke tonight. It's just like running a business. But when you don't know what your revenues are gonna be year after year, it's a very difficult job to sit in the seat. It's a difficult job to sit in Kevin's seat, Dr. Sloan's seat, Ms. Harrison's seat, Mr. Ernest's seat, and Dr. Griggs. Because they have to plan each year, and each year's different. So, if it were that easy, I don't disagree with this gentleman. But this is a different type of business. I wish we had control over revenues. We really don't. We have no control. Our control is based on how the economy is doing, how the legislators vote on certain revenues. Ms. Cope?
You've heard a lot of opinions this evening, and I'm sure you have your own, as I mentioned before. But I think one thing we can all agree on in this room is that we have an amazing school district. Amazing. And I think everybody on the board agrees with that, and I'm sure you in the audience do as well, because that's why you're here tonight. The list that we have in front of us, the decisions we're trying to make, that will dismantle this amazing school district, no matter what. We talk about not affecting the kids, we're gonna affect the kids, we're gonna affect the kids, we're gonna affect the teachers, we're gonna affect you as the families. So, if we have an amazing district, and we don't want to dismantle it, we need a tax increase. So from there, we have, as we have in front of us, several different options and several different dates. And so our agenda item that we're trying to talk about is our ballot initiative. We have opportunities for April, August, and November. We tried August this last year. We found it was very difficult because our own families were not in school yet, our children were not in school, and we struggled getting our message out. So I find that one challenging. To me, the next logical is April. I'll tell you, one of our challenges there is if we did not do communication well this last time, I'm concerned that we need to learn, we need to heal, we need to plan, and we need to communicate. And to communicate, we need time to do that. April's fast. With all the holidays coming up, it'll be here before you know it. That will help us the most if we get it done in April. It will allow us to make maybe some better decisions for next year. Then we roll to August, as I mentioned, that I am concerned about, and we just tried that. And after that, we have November, which is the presidential election as well. So just so you know, those are some of the things running through my head as we talk about if we have an amazing district, which we do, and if we don't want to dismantle it, we need a tax increase. When are we going to do it? If we're gonna do it in April, we need a lot of help to make that happen.
Thank you, Ms. Cope. I don't see any of the lights on. I'm sorry, Mr. Ryan.
I just want to say, what Amy said sounds good, sounds really good. But on the flip side, what if we don't do anything? And then in April it fails again? Then we're right back here in the same spot. We can't keep putting off. It's not gonna disappear. We need to make adjustments. We can always readjust if the funds become available somehow. We have to be proactive and do our job here of balancing the budget. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. So, we'll bring that back as an action item for next meeting as well. Unless the board. Go ahead, Ms.
Okay, Kevin, at what percentage, or maybe it's a dollar amount, I'm not sure, does the state, give that a district is, I forgot what the term is.
When is the district considered a financial?
Yes, thank you. I was like, what is
Districts who have 3% fund balance or lower are considered financially stressed.
We are not there right now.
We're not there right now.
And right now, let's see. I don't know which scenario I would look at.
We should end this year somewhere around 16.5% fund balance.
So right now, doing nothing at all is 2 years out.
Yes.
I know that we would have to do TANs and things like that.
Yes.
It is, though, more common than not for districts around the state to do this. Not that it's a good thing, not that it's, but
It's not unusual for districts to do tax anticipation notes.
I just wanna say that out loud. In 2 years, we will be considered a financially struggling district with our projections today.
Right. And it's difficult because the public hasn't been privy to all of the conversations that led up to that. So I do think it's important that they know that we do try to do some predictive modeling based on a certain set of assumptions. So as you change your assumptions, your model is, the results of your model are going to change.
absolutely.
So the assumptions were that we would not do any, the assumptions that were used for this were based on not having any additional revenue or making any additional expenditure reductions. If we didn't do anything, what would happen? That's what you're looking at. So those would certainly change as we would affect one side of that equation or the other or both. But yes, if we do nothing, then yes, we would rapidly deplete our resources and become financially stressed. That is correct.
Okay, so that'll be an action item, next meeting.
Commissioner Bauer, can I clarify that item? So I wanted to know what it is that we're going to take action on. We're going to make a decision. Is that what we're going to be doing about how to take care of?
Well, I guess this is a work session, so, since, this item was talked about and several board members had, comments, pro and con, about that item, I feel it's necessary, unless the board objects, to put that on, for the board, to, take action. I don't recommend, a decision, on a tax initiative unless all 7 members are rowing in the same direction. So, we had a 4-3 vote last time, and I haven't heard consensus, on the board yet on when that would take place or how much that would be. So, I'm gonna go back out to the public and ask them. My suggestion to this board is that all 7 members need to be rowing in the same direction. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. So, we had people that were against it on the board, and we had people that were for it on the board. So I don't think that. I don't know that we have consensus to do that, and I wouldn't encourage us to put it on the ballot until that is solved. And I don't know if I have enough information in front of me to make that decision right now. So, personally, I'm one member. I hate to continue to have this conversation week after week. And that we could possibly hold that off the agenda. But I think I don't think that we should consider a tax increase until 7 members are in favor of the amount, the timing, and the direction. And, because that's essential, when you're going up for 11.
So we are bringing back, action to make reductions? Is that what we're at? Is that what we're
Yeah,
asking?
the 2 items, right at the top, would be action items for next meeting. And I guess all 3 can be action items for next meeting. Okay, so,
Would you like us to have a specific motion recommended?
Balanced budget?
you know, I think there's a couple different ways that we could present this to the board. I would encourage the board to take some time in the next 2 weeks to have some ideas on how to achieve what they feel is important. I don't think that we can pick apart the budget. We have to have some faith in you guys. So my recommendation, the board can weigh in on this. My recommendation would be to bring all 3 items back and let the board make the motions or and the decisions on that, and not have suggested motions ahead of time.
Can I request that the tax initiative be the first vote? I think that will help me decide how I choose my other votes. So for instance, if the board is not supporting a tax increase in April, that will affect some of my decisions. If the board is supporting a tax increase in April, depending on the amount, that will affect some of my decisions.
Okay. I don't disagree with that. Would the board like to weigh in on that? I think the budget reductions for 15-16 and 16-17 are items that, regardless of passing, we'd still have that potential deficit. So we continue to move forward with those action items. However, if the funds became available, they'd be restored immediately, if ballot language said that. So I think that's a good plan, and regardless of, if we knew it was going to pass, it'd be an easier decision on items 2 and 3, but I still think you have to balance the budget regardless of the decision putting it on. Superintendent comments.
Yes, I would, just like to echo a few of the things that have been said tonight, and we do have quite a few people in attendance tonight, and those who may not know our story, just to provide a little bit of background, that this has been a very responsible school board, and may not have been all the same members through these past years, but since 2008 and 9, in anticipation of declining revenue, our staff has been reduced somewhere in a net number of around 140. Is that right, Dr. Griggs?
About 150, actually.
Okay, so I just want people to understand that this is a very responsible operation that's running here. So the staff reductions have been made, which is the largest percentage of our budget. We also promised our voters in 2000, and when did we, in 2000, what year, 12, that we would, what was the last year we re-upped the sunset? 8. That we would let that sunset, which was $4 million, that we would not go back out and ask them again to re-up that 20 cents. And so we did let that roll off, and that has been a loss of $4 million. And in anticipation of where we are going, this current year that we are in, we have reduced our budget by $8.2 million. And I think the thing that is the easiest thing for people to latch onto with regard to the impact on kids is that we have reduced $230,000 for academic tutoring for our kids. So we've already begun to get questions, why can't our students have supports that they have gotten used to in this district? So the kids who have the most to lose in all of this conversation are our students who are most at risk. They came to us behind, they're continuing to be behind, and our responsibility as a school district is to close that gap. So our school board made a fiscal commitment to our kids who are most at risk, and now we are beginning to, conversations that were had tonight, we are beginning to dismantle those supports that we have in place. I think it's also important to know that we have been written up in various publications through the years for our return on investment, not by anything that Francis Howell has put together, by research that was done by Harvard University of school districts throughout the country, and not one publication, but various publications. The results that we get for the amount of money that we spend is worthy enough to be written up in national publications. And our neighboring school districts, who spend much more than we do per pupil, didn't make the mark. So I think it's important to know that we are a very tightly run ship here. And did we know this day was coming? Yeah, we did know this day was coming. And the board was committed to doing the work that if the tax levy didn't pass, we were going to begin to have to do the work that is necessary. And those are the decisions that lie ahead of us right now. We have a great story to tell in Francis Howell. We have an awesome story to tell. It is a story that I'm proud to tell. I love telling the story, and it is a story. It's a great turnaround story, and it has taken resources for us to be able to do that. And it's very hard to sit here and watch the school district begin to be dismantled. It is extremely difficult. So I would encourage our board, our community, to stay in conversation about this problem so that we don't have to tear apart what has taken us nearly 13 years to build. And I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we have consensus among our board. We have great board members. We have people who think independently, and I think we need to continue to talk about this problem until we get to a better place on the solution. I don't think we have arrived at that place yet. I think until we get the point that several people made tonight, until we get to a place where all of our board can commit to a time and amount, it is a futile effort for us to continue, for us to go back to our people. We are not there. So I think that we have risen the level of awareness about the need in our district. Maybe it wasn't done correctly, but I think our people are there now. I think we need to do some listening and some soul searching and continue to work at the problem until we get to a place that we are working together on this solution, and I don't believe that we are there yet. So I would hope that we would not make decisions that are rash and that we will allow the opportunities that present themselves to us yet to be vetted and to be discussed and to be problem solved around, is this the direction for us to go? It was hard to take that defeat, I would be the first to say that. But it's not the end of the world. We have caring people, they're here tonight to capitalize on that energy, and as someone said tonight, it takes a lot of work to do what we just did, and to turn around and do it again while people are working is going to be a monumental task. So, no, that's
Sure you want to say more? You got a thought there. Look on the page, sure.
No, the only thing that we need to talk about is strategic planning at a future date and time, but not tonight.
Okay, board, you got one other. Upcoming meetings. September 17th, September 18th. Obviously, the 3 action items would be included on there. My computer's frozen, so is there any additions or subtractions to that agenda other than what we talked about tonight? Okay. This, I thought we were going to talk about that first through the communications committee and then bring that to the board. Okay. All right. Ms. Cope has requested an item to and I'll let you talk about it. And the one thing that, you know, the process that we like to do is like take it through the committee that first, and then bring it to the board, but go ahead.
Yes, a little bit different.
Sure.
So, one of the things I would like to have added to the agenda, if it's okay with the board, is one of the common themes that I'm hearing from the community is lack of communication. So I think the board needs to participate in that communication as well. I know we've tried some opportunities in the past, worked, didn't work, successful, not successful, but I would like to have added to the agenda a discussion on how the board could increase its communication with the community. Yes, we have a community relations subcommittee. I'm actually part of that team, and there's a plan that we're working at developing there, but I think the board has a different role. So I would like to add it to the agenda.
Okay. Would you, for purpose of the planning committee, is there anything the administration needs to do, or are you going to prepare something? Do you have some ideas?
I'll be happy to prepare some ideas to present myself.
Okay. So,
They have enough going on right now.
okay, great. I just want to make sure that they don't have more work to do. And if anybody's got any ideas for that, that would be welcome as well. So I think that
For September 17th.
any other additions or subtractions to the meetings before us? I entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Ms. Bice, second by, is that Michael? Ms. Cook. By roll call?
Ms. Ferguson?
Aye. Motion carries 7.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Yes.
I'm probably completely out of line, but their meeting's adjourned. Help me for a minute so that I can understand if I'm just wasting my time, or how many people in here would help this board pass the 45 or 50 cent tax levy and stop talking about cutting buses and school days? If you do that, would you raise your hand? How many would do that? Okay. How many are totally opposed to any tax increase?
We got some board members.
I don't see any hands, folks. Thank you.